Okay, it's 8:30. We'll start the meeting. Roll call, please.
John Regheimer,
Here.
Stacy Hessel, Mark Helwig, Jeff Haney.
Here.
Tom Duffy is excused. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Certification of compliance, please.
This meeting was noticed to the media and the public as required by Section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. The meeting agenda is set. Public comments. Linda Zellmer.
Good morning, Linda Zillmer, Edgewater property owner and property taxpayer. The three agenda items I wanted to address today are the budget, the investments, and the Veterans Memorial. But just to give you maybe context for the comments I'm going to make, this is an Apple product. I would bet that probably within the county staffing and officials, there might be more Apple products than there are Androids. And certainly Apple stock over the years has helped make many people's lives comfortable with its performance. And why is that? And I know you're not going to answer that, and I'm not going to answer that, but there is kind of an older TED Talk out there now from Simon Sinek, who talks about starting with why. And if you start with why as to your decisions as county board members, you understand why things are required, and it's not just to check the box procedure. So going to the budget, last fall, when the first budget hearing was not held according to what are requirements by the state, the county did take corrective action and then held the second public hearing, which I appreciated. So when you look at your budget timeline today, I would hope that you would make some corrections to it. And I would love to suggest that maybe Mr. Markgren and some of you go and watch Washburn County's best practices. They have a budget week. So in their county committee meetings of jurisdiction, those committees have already received the department budgets. They will be going to the finance committee, and each department head has to come and make a presentation and get grilled on what their budget is and what services they provide. Budgets never even come to committees before they go to the full county board. And I really think that loses something in the process and the understanding, and it's maybe rather even disrespectful of department heads. Under investments, I want to thank Mr. Markgren for replying to my concerns about some investments that have been caused problems for other entities. And so I would hope that this committee would review its policy and some of the assurances behind the investments that are being made on behalf of the public in Sawyer County. And finally, I am concerned that the Veterans Memorial closed session discussion is back on without, in the interim, having had more public opportunity as to what the veterans and publics would like regarding a location and the tribute. Thank you.
Thank you. Consider approval for minutes from the previous meeting. Motion by Stacy Hessel, second by Mark Helwig. Any discussion? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Motion carries. No treasurer's report in person today. Okay. Finance Department report.
All right, we will start with the sales tax report. May was down a little bit from last year, up over previous years, but down a little from last year. We are still on a good trajectory. Projection shows almost 3.3 million, which would be a nice increase over last year after having flat from 23 to 24. Any questions there? All right, then moving on to the general fund. We're at, through May is 42% of the budget, so you can kind of look at the numbers and compare to that. We're overall in really good shape. It's showing we're slightly below for revenue. That is because that's not including any transfer from fund balance, which we've budgeted the last 3 years, have not had to do in the last 3 years. So the plan is, or the hope is that we don't have to do that budget transfer. And then on the expense side, we're just about right on at 41%. A little change from how I'd done this in the past, and I changed it last month, is that I'm starting to do the transfers to the other funds monthly instead of waiting until the end of the year. So that is a true number there, the 41%. So any questions on the general fund for 25? Then with human services, we are running a little bit behind on revenues, which is typical because we're fairly grant driven there. We have to spend the money, claim the grant, get the reimbursement. So it always runs a little bit behind. On the expense side, we're at 40%, so we are just a little bit under budget. One thing I'm tracking a little closer is what we're spending on contracted services. Those are things that are largely out of our control. A lot of it's due to out of county placements. So I am tracking that. I think we're at 43% for the year, so we're running just a little bit ahead, but not too bad for this time of year. And then moving on to highway. As I've mentioned before, highway is always a month behind because they do everything through CHEMS, which is a software program, and then at the end of the month, transfer everything into New World. So that's always a little bit behind. We're looking good though, running a little bit of a net income right now, so that's good for this time of year too. Any questions on either of those? Moving on to CIP purchases, we are doing some work on the Huber wing. I believe the roof is done now, so we put a new roof on the maintenance, or on the Huber roof of the jail, and then a couple small items at the Oasis building. I believe they're remodeling some of the flooring there. Any questions on that? Moving into the budget timeline, this is our third look at this. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I did correct, before this came out, the posting of the budget. That's what we ran into last year. So I've moved that up a little bit. I won't have quite as good of numbers by the time we post it, but it'll be really close. There may be a couple changes before we have a final budget. Any questions or comments on the timeline? This is going to be, then I will send this out to staff and to outside entities then today after the meeting. The guidelines, very similar to what we've done in the past. The request will be due, new staff will be due at the end of June, and then the budget reports from the department heads will be due at the end of July, along with CIP. I will have all the salaries and benefits entered in with an assumption of 5% increase in health insurance, and we'll put some salary increases into very similar to what we've done with probably a January, July. And then capital improvement plan, again, that'll be due on July 31st as well. I'm asking for, as I did last year, a more thorough 5-year plan from them, twofold, that will get put in our budget hearing packet, and also it helps me plan the mill rate movement, the tax levy rate. If there's anything big coming up, I want to know that so that I can kind of plan accordingly. So that's why I'm asking for that. And again, the parameters are based on current law, subject to change. Any questions there? All right, and then we're going to have a little discussion on the potential effect of Act 10 removal. This has been requested, and so we'll have some discussion here. I'm going to give a little background first. My background is a little bit different because I was in schools at the time of Act 10. There are a couple things that were different. By and large, it was the same. But what Act 10 allowed public entities to do is make changes to health insurance. At the time prior to Act 10, that was largely controlled by the unions. In fact, even the carrier was written into union contracts for a lot of schools. I don't know if counties had that same situation. But so that freed up a lot. For where I was, just changing the insurance company saved $350,000 to $375,000 without changing the benefit design or anything. So that was just a huge savings for us. Along with that it was mandated that any public entity on the state plan of insurance had to charge 12% copay to their employees. And most public entities, even if they weren't on the state plan, did the same. Where I was, we were not on the state insurance, but we did start charging employees 12%. So between those two, that was a savings of $757,000, which was huge. You know, you're talking a budget of probably at the time 13 million. So to save $750,000 was it saved the district from making budget adjustments and cuts. Another thing is it required the employee to begin paying their share of WRS contribution into the state retirement plan. So that was a huge change. And this was not, like, all the savings were great, but it was not without effect because it was a huge impact on the staff. You know, basically all these savings were on the backs of staff at the time. We all know that. And then the other thing is it has restricted negotiations to base pay only. And prior to that, this is where it's a little different with the school. The school had a qualifying economic offer that had to be 3.8% or greater. So, but that included everything: insurance, salary increases, step increases, everything was rolled into that. So, you know, it wasn't a horrible deal at the time. The problem was revenue limits had been locked in back in the early 90s, and this was almost 20 years later. So you had these ever increasing package increases. By the time you settled, it was 4 to 4.25. It was always a little over 3.8. But our revenue increases were 1 or 2% through that whole time period. So you had this ever-growing gap. And the other factor that really played into it was it had gotten to the point where when you went to negotiations and then to mediation, the employers really had no chance of winning that anymore. And so different things were tried, and at the time it finally was, okay, this is what we're going to do. And it was a sweeping change. It helped financially. It, you know, didn't help with morale and climate, but that's a little background on it. And the final thing I would say is it created two categories of employees because public safety, you know, emergency, police, that kind of thing, it didn't apply to them. So they could continue negotiating and everything. So, you know, and that's the change that's kind of on the table, is restoring that so people are on a level playing field. Now, could it go beyond that? We don't know. So that's what we'll talk about. How did that affect Sutter County when Act 10 went into play? The county already had control over premiums, and they were already charging 12% to employees. What was a change was there was specific language, again, written into the employee contract at that time that I don't know how much was removed or if it was changed, but anyhow, the county was granted control back of that. The employees paid the WRS portion, their portion again. And the wage increases in it, I don't know that this really changed, but they had to be within the restraints of the budget. I think that was always into play. You know, if you can't pay for it, you can't do it. And I know that there were years where there wasn't much given for salary increases. And then some of the unions, other than the deputies, well, all the unions within a period of time did not recertify, which was very common. So then what would it mean if it is reinstated? Well, if it leveled the playing field and everybody could unionize and negotiate again, that would open up negotiations beyond base pay that could affect budget. Again, without doing something different, there's no new revenue stream, so we're still bound by what we can afford to do. So there's a potential cost there, or potential pressure for a cost. I don't really see any changes for health insurance because employees were paying 12% before, they've continued to pay 12%. I don't really see that changing. One thing we did a year ago, well, not a year ago, but for 2025, was we did offer a second plan of insurance, which is an HSA model. They do pay half, so they pay 6% employee contribution for the premiums on that. And they take on a little more burden of, with an HSA, your first cost before you get to insurance, basically. So you're paying your own deductible from the beginning, but it's aimed at people who are more healthy, possibly, or willing to take a chance. They're saving on the premium copay to take a risk of having higher cost if they actually have to go in and have a procedure done. The potential big cost then, if it went that far, if it was restored where the employer paid both halves of WRS, that would be about an $800,000 hit for the county. So that's the big monetary ticket if Act 10 was totally reversed. No, that is a retirement cost, retirement contribution cost. So that's my spiel. I'll take any questions or comments now.
So the worst case scenario is the retirement and then the pressure for a union cost, which something. So potentially exposed 800,000 plus something.
Correct.
Yeah.
I have not heard it going to the extent of restoring WRS, but that you don't know when it gets.
Might come in stages.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's been a year since that was reversed in a, yeah.
We used to have 3 unions, courthouse union, highway union, and the sheriff's department.
So now this savings, as you're talking about, like 800,000, what effect does that have on the employees?
The effect at the time on employees was that 800,000, whoever was working here at that time, they had to start paying that. And that was a state law then. Yeah.
It depends on the
If it was reinstated, it would be a cost to the county, yeah. It would be a savings to employees.
There's nothing that the county can do unless we did it. We're at the mercy of.
You're not turned on.
Thought I was, sorry. We're at the mercy. I mean, we can keep talking about it and to be proactive. Is there an account that we can put aside to be proactive on this, or is it just information?
Well, this isn't a one-time cost. 800,000 would be annual, so it would be hard to pre-fund that in perpetuity. We would have to make some changes.
And I think that's why it's important that, I don't know if we have to talk about it every month, but I think it's keep an eye on it. I guess it's a matter of my opinion. I think it's inevitable. I don't know if it'll go that full route, but that's what's been campaigned on, and I think that's what will be delivered. So I just think something we have to not get blindsided by. I mean, when you say, yeah, there's nothing we can do about it and we can't stop what the court's going to reverse or not. But if we were facing something like that, all of a sudden, boom, $1 million. One choice would be to, well, we have to pay it. What would our choices be? We can cut elsewhere, I guess, to.
Yeah, I mean, your choices are number one, hopefully if that was reinstated, there would be funding to help pay for it versus just this is back on you and no adjustment. That's unlikely. Number two would be making budget adjustments. Number three would be trying to maximize other revenues somehow. Number four would be tax. Somehow reworking things to free that up, whether referendum or some things that are outside of the revenue limit that we have not taken advantage of that could be.
Yeah, I think all things would have to be looked
We'd
at.
have to look at everything if it gets to that point.
The old screw around, find out. I mean, really, I don't know if people understand that
Well, the other
partially
thing,
what is coming down the road.
the other thing that wouldn't be considered is every employer wants to take care of their staff the best they can and treat them the best they can and retain their staff. So that money was rerouted other ways, mostly through salary increases. You know, where I had been, that's what we did where we could. There were years prior to Act 10, before I was in employment there, that they actually had negative salary movement because the insurance ate up more than the 3.8 or 4.0 settlement. My whole time there, we never had to do that. And I did work 4 years prior to Act 10 at that school. So I worked under those conditions, and we never had to do that when I was there. And then after Act 10, just the savings from switching insurance companies we were able to reroute money to staff too, so.
Is on the, is increasing tax, is that only through referendum? That'd be the only way to do it?
There are, you know, we take advantage of CIP right now, capital improvement. And there's more we could put into that. There is another exemption for, I mentioned out of county placements earlier. If those are court ordered, that is an exemption. We have not done that. There's another one that we talked about one time, property liability and casualty insurance can also be routed outside of the limit through debt service. So there are other options, but referendum would be an option as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Thanks, Mike. That was good. I think it's just something I think we should keep an eye on, so we're not.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to be surprised by
Right.
it.
Exactly. Thank you.
You bet.
Departmental financial updates.
All right, so today we're going to start looking at general government. If you look at our large report, this is going to be everything that's under Fund 100 under the sub Fund 33. So that's what we're looking at first. This encompasses a lot of things. It's, you know, like the term says, general government. So it's things like our audit, our property and casualty insurance, legal fees. The other thing that's also included in here is all of our outside entities with the exception of Nemacolin Transit is in its own fund. Otherwise, the rest of them are running through this. So looking first at 2024, we did come a little bit under budget. And there is a reason for that. So you can see that we've got warrant comp rates and a rebate and liability rebate. We actually, if we get, and it's actually called a dividend, not a rebate, we apply that against the cost of that to reduce to make it a net cost. So when we look at this next year, I probably won't have line items for those. I'll just have those ones that we do get. Then looking down, we were quite a bit over budget on corporation counsel in 2024, and independent auditing also was a bit over. auditing the cost has gone up because now we have to update our OPEB, which is other post-employment liability, annually now. It was every other year. Now it's annually, so that's an additional cost every year. The property liability insurance was up a little bit. I think that was because we had the final numbers for the addition put on into the insurance. Then we're going to get into the ones that are going to be basically right on budget. Those are the ones that are libraries. Those are scripted by statute and or decided at the budget hearing and budget process to the final county board approval. So we know those amounts. And then our contributions to economic development, Senior Resource Center, Hayward Lakes Visitors Bureau, Namakaga Transit, which again isn't going to be reflected here. And then the final one is our contingency fund, which it's there for things that are unanticipated. We really haven't had to dip into that since I've been here. Other than it, I guess it offsets some of those overages. Any questions on subfund 33 for 2024? At the end of the year, we were under both. So we came out fine in the budget. For 2025 then, I guess one thing I want to point out, it looks like we're really high on property liability insurance. That's because we haven't done the allocations back to HHS and highway. That's why that number is so much over budget. Otherwise, things are tracking pretty well. And again, a lot of this stuff we pay in January. So it looks like we're way over budget, but the amount has been spent already in total. Any questions there? All right, then we're going to look at some individual ones. The first one is airport. We'll start with 2024, and we did go $22,000 over budget on the revenue side, which is good. We received more monies than we were budgeted for, and spending was under by about $18,000. So the net cost of the airport for 2024 was $33,000, just under, which is actually pretty good. Yeah, and we had budgeted almost 75,000. So it was a really good year last year. For 2025, again, revenues are running behind, similar to some of the other ones where this is a deal where we get a percentage of airport activity. Derek has to, especially with like the fuel, he has to file reports with the state, get those numbers, and then we get a percentage of that. So that always has a little bit of a lag. The expense side, we're running a little bit ahead, in large part to snow removal. I mean, obviously, snow removal happens the first 3 to 4 months of the year. So we're through that. Now we're having months where we don't have any. It'll pick up again. Hopefully not till November, maybe October. We've had October before. But, nothing is sticking out as alarming me at this point.
It was closed, but now it's open as of yesterday.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, that project went very, very well and finished ahead of schedule. It's open to prior approval, prior authorization only. Yesterday, today, tomorrow, and then Saturday and Sunday it will be open. And then probably again Monday and Tuesday it's going to be back to prior approval, then should be open again. They do have to come back and paint and groove at the end of July. But it was closed for 5 weeks about, so that is a lot of lost revenue and landing fees, fuel sales, everything that we get a cut of.
They were working a lot of late hours. I live over there and I could hear the trucks and they were doing a great job. I mean, they busted. It wasn't like
Yeah, it was
they were
fast.
trying to go slow.
Haas did a great job. They had the demo done in days and actually so fast that we couldn't get the pavement plant we were ahead of schedule. So they were busy working on a road project, making the pavement for that. And we had a little bit of lag to get that. And then luckily, while they were paving, we didn't have a lot of rain. I know it feels like we've had a lot recently, but they were by and large done before it started. Because there were 12 runs or passes to make the runway. Each one takes about 5 to 6 hours, and each one has to be done in completion. They cannot start it, it's raining, we got to stop and start up again, because that has to be perfectly smooth. So we were blessed with good weather and good crews to work with, and it's done. All right, any other questions on airport? All right, then moving on to extension. UW Extension is a subcontract, so that's basically what you're going to be looking at. For 24, we did have just a little bit of salary. We always had a county employee who was 5% support for extension. Extension worked at where among 5 counties they work with, they were able to hire someone. It just worked out better. They had more support and worked out better for them. We didn't have that interruption with the person who was doing that with their regular job. So that worked out good. Extension, we get some nutritional things. We get our 4-H program through there. I did meet with both Lori and Ariga from Extension about our strategic planning. So that was a good meeting. I'm going to meet again Monday with them at 9:30 to kind of hash out a plan. Couple different options we're looking at, but any time that's Ariga's will not be an extra cost. If we do something that they have to bring in other staff, there could be a potential cost there, but so we do get a lot from Extension. You know, the focus is 4-H because that's the visible one, but we do get some other services that are valuable through them as well.
Those are there, whether we use them or not, or we can do à la carte, or how does it all, that's always been confused on that. Because there's a lot they can do, right?
Yes.
And we may or may not.
So we
Need it or
do, like, they need to know from us what we want to set their funding and staffing and everything. But within that, yes, there is a little give and take. Like, we do the strategic planning meeting and it might not cost us anything or cost us very little. Because if it's within their staff time that's allocated to Sawyer County, then
The
yes.
4-H, nutritional, they're kind of on retainer.
Those are kind of retainer ones, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
But, you know, like Ariga, for instance, she'll wear different hats. She does some nutritional stuff, but she'll also do strategic planning. So if they can do it within the staff we have, they'll do it.
Nutritional, you mean like farming and things like that? Gardening.
There's that. She does some instruction out at LCO, for instance. And we've had her do some here, like when we had a wellness day, they brought people in for that. And Ariga did 1 or 2 sessions there too.
See, I see value in 4-H and strategic planning and nutritional. I don't know. Okay.
All right, any other questions on 24? At the end of the year, we don't get a lot of revenue from that program, but we get some, and it ended up being a little bit above, and they came in a little under budget again, so. For 2025, there's just really not much activity yet. They haven't invoiced us for services yet, no revenue. and just some incidental supplies for 4-H. You know, we are gearing up for fair season, so they're ramping that up a little bit. Basically, most of the expenses have been for that. So not much to report there. Any questions on that? Then moving to the investment report. Still, the numbers are good. The CD we locked in okay, that one's not reflected here. That was in May. Never mind. We've got 3 CDs outstanding. The Franzen one matured in May. We did replace it with an ampersand one, which actually had a really strong rate. I think it was 4.16. So not much down from the one in January we bid out. And the money market ones, which you see up on top, they're still doing all right. You know, the feds haven't touched the rate, so that there hasn't been any change in what we're getting to speak of, really. I guess the only other thing, the overall interest, you know, we're down from where we were because the rates are down, but it's holding, and we're keeping up with what was budgeted for 2025. So that's the important thing. One thing I would point out on the ARPA unspent, that's been 200,000 for over a year. Well, we did pay out one of our final 2 broadband contracts we had that we put ARPA money towards. And actually in May, we paid out the final one. So for next month's report, that'll be gone. That'll all be spent. We had to have all that committed by December of 24, which we had it all committed by the end of 23. And now all of it has been spent, so.
Remind me what the LATCF is.
Local Area Tribal Council Fund. It was a one-time money that came, I believe, in 23 in 2 installments. There are no restrictions on it. One thing that could come out of strategic planning is a good use of that money as we prioritize things that we could do. The nice thing is there are no restrictions, so. Well, it'll take care of one year. Any questions on that? That brings us to the resolution before you then. And this we've talked about for about 2 months now, 3 months. This is the 3rd month. This is the actual resolution then authorizing the borrowing of $2.825 million for the purposes of expanding and beefing up, getting new equipment for our emergency services radio tower system to make our staff safer as they're responding to calls and everything there. This is the actual resolution. Then we've talked about, we've authorized the project, we've authorized the funding of it through debt issue. This is the actual authorization for the debt issue itself. Then in July, we will come back with the bids from the note issue. And we would approve that. We would get the money then sometime in mid-July. The settlement would occur. So any questions on this?
No, I make a motion to approve the initial resolution authorizing the borrowing of not to exceed $2,825,000 and providing for the issuance and sale of general obligation promissory notes, series 2025.
Motion by Mark Howig, second by Jeff Haney. Any discussion?
Got a question. Got a question for Mr. Markram. Have you heard any more from the tribal governing board on the WOJB tower?
I have not. I checked in on that and GenCom is working with them on it, but I do not have a confirmation on it.
Okay, because I haven't heard nothing for a while neither. That's why I was wondering. But I can find out again. And when I do, I'll let you know.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Veterans Memorial closed session. So I need a motion to go into closed session. Motion by Stacy Hessel to go into closed session,
Second it.
second by Jeff Haney. Any discussion? All those in favor?
It's a roll call vote.
Oh, let's take roll call. Thank you.
Mr. Righeimer,
Yes.
Ms. Hessel, Mr. Hellwig, Mr. Haney, motion carried.
Okay, we'll go into closed session. Mike, you need to sign then?
Please.
Open session.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to make a motion to purchase. No. Make a motion to have Mike Markran start the purchase process of the property at 15785 US Highway 63, Hayward, for the cost of not to exceed 105,000 for construction of the veteran tribute.
Okay, motion by Mark Hellwig,
I'll second it.
second by Jeff Haney. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Say aye. Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Any correspondence, reports from conferences or meetings? No? Any future agenda items you want to throw out there? All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.